The email arrived at 3:12 a.m. Eli Maddox hadn't slept again. He sat at his kitchen table, the same spot he'd occupied every night for the past 3 months. Rain tapped lightly against the cracked window pane beside him, and the weak blue light from his laptop screen painted shadows across his face. His coffee had gone cold, untouched. The subject line read, "They never emptied the sub-basement. No sender, no IP, no trace." Eli stared at the message. There was no body text, just a link. Normally he'd trash it. The internet was full of weirdos and pranksters, and even more full of ghosts. But something about the timing, the hour, the silence in the room, the way the email seemed to arrive right when his attention began to slip. He clicked. It opened a single image. A rusted elevator door stood in the middle of a dark concrete corridor. Streaks of reddish-brown peeled down the surface. A broken medical gurney lay twisted beside it. One wheel snapped off. Across the bottom corner of the photo, a faint smear of marker read, "Black Hollow State Asylum, 1967. Eli leaned forward. In the lower left of the frame, mostly hidden by shadow, was a fingernail, a human one, frayed, dirty. It looked like someone had been trying to hold the camera or stop it from being taken. A pulse thudded low behind his eyes. He opened a new tab and typed, without thinking, to Camille Hart. Subject, Black Hollow. Tip, meet me, I'll bring lights. Eli. He hadn't spoken to Camille Hart in nearly a year. Last time, they'd both been chasing the story of a collapsed tuberculosis ward in upstate Maine. She found the nurse's diary. He captured the whispers on tape. They both left with cracked ribs and a shared silence neither of them ever explained. But when the reply came, just one line, it was enough. Midnight, side gate. The next night, the forest was so quiet it felt fake. Black Hollow lay 5 miles from the nearest road, tucked into a crooked valley behind old logging trails. When Eli pulled up to the rusted fence, his headlights fell across an arched metal sign, barely legible under the grime. Black Hollow State Asylum. Camille stood by the gate, arms crossed, flashlight hanging from her belt. Her long coat flapped in the windless air like it had a mind of its own. "You came," she said. Her voice was quieter than he remembered, more careful. "You brought the keys?" he asked. She nodded and lifted a ring with maybe 50 thin, mismatched keys. Most of them are just for show. This one, she held up a bent brass skeleton key, was mailed to the Montpellier Public Archives in 1974. No one knows who sent it. Eli raised an eyebrow. "And you have it." "I have a very convincing librarian face." She unlocked the gate. A groan like a dying whale echoed out as they pushed it open. The asylum loomed ahead, 5 stories tall, wrapped in shadow. Its windows stared out like vacant eye sockets. "This is a bad idea," Camille said. Eli lifted his camera and hit a record. Yup. Inside, the floorboards creaked, as if they remembered every footstep ever taken. Dust blanketed everything, but here and there, drag marks carved odd trails through the filth. Some led into rooms, others ended at walls. They passed the patient dining hall. Tables still stood, though many were tilted or flipped. A spoon rested in the middle of the floor, crusted in something black. Camille scanned the walls with her light. "See this?" she whispered. "The murals. These were painted by the residents." Eli turned his lens. Human figures danced across the plaster, headless, armless, some stretching unnaturally long. One mural was signed, Patient 12D, 1965. They called him the Drawer, Camille said. He went blind after a botched electroshock, still kept painting. Eli stepped closer to the wall. The face of one painted figure had been scratched out, deeply, as if by fingernails. Down a long hallway, they found the elevator. Its doors were metal, sealed with 3 large bolts. The paint was rusted to a deep, coagulated red. Across it, someone had scrawled, "Stay below, stay gone, stay out." Camille touched the metal. This is where that picture was taken. Eli crouched. Along the seam between the doors, he found something stuck. Fibers, strips of fabric, almost waxy to the touch. He opened his field recorder. Suddenly the screen flickered. The hallway lights, long dead for decades, buzzed once, then again. Camille's breath hitched. A low metallic ding echoed down the corridor. The elevator. No power, no circuits, no motion. But the ding came again. Eli stood slowly, camera trained on the panel. A third ding, and then silence. "Basements this way," Camille whispered. He turned to her. "What?" "The stairs. I found a fire escape map last year. If the sublevel's still there, we can get in from the west wing." "Do we want to?" Her flashlight clicked on. "We came this far." They walked on. Behind them, the elevator doors groaned softly in the dark, as if exhaling. The stairwell moaned as they descended. Each step groaned beneath their feet, as if resisting. The air thickened, damp, dense, laced with the bitter tang of mildew and age. Eli's breath caught in his throat more than once, and it wasn't from the dust. Camille moved ahead, flashlight in hand, its beam cutting through the fog that clung to the lower floor. Pipes along the ceiling dripped slowly, no visible water source above. "How is it wet down here?" Eli whispered. Camille didn't answer right away. She held the light against the wall and tapped a water stain that spiraled outward like a fingerprint. If the sub-basement's intact, we're probably standing over one of the patient baths. These places used hydrotherapy, or claimed they did. They reached the end of the steps. The hallway opened into a long, rectangular wing, both sides lined with padded doors, some ajar, some missing entirely. Deep drag marks carved semicircles into the tile floor, like something heavy had been moved, or moved itself, room to room. Eli whispered, "This wasn't in any of the floor plans I pulled." Camille nodded. "That's because this wing was built after the riots started. It was unofficial." She shined the light toward a brass plaque, half buried in dust on the wall. "Sea Ward, Low Response Unit, 1966. "I thought they shut down before then," Eli asked. "Officially, yes," Camille replied. A soft metallic creak echoed from behind them. They both turned. Nothing, just empty doors, peeling plaster, flickering dark. Camille moved forward again, careful, deliberate. Eli focused his camera on the farthest door. A dim light flickered inside, a bare bulb swinging from the ceiling. Not electric, gas. Impossible. He adjusted his mic pickup. A whisper, not speech, not wind, just breathe. Too close to the microphone. He stepped back and tapped his headphones. "I'm getting something." Camille paused outside the far room. This is where they kept the unresponsive patients, ones who stopped talking, eating, moving. They thought silence was contagious. Contagious? He echoed. She nodded. Eli stepped beside her and pushed open the door. The room was small, no bed, just a cracked sink, a single stool, and a window sealed with chicken wire. On the floor lay a dull, porcelain face, blackened by time, with one glass eye missing and a sewn mouth. It had no arms. Eli knelt. "This wasn't placed here," he said. "It's been sitting for decades." Camille took out a notebook. She opened it to a page with a sketched layout of the wing. This room belonged to patient 12D. Eli looked up. "The one who painted the murals?" Camille nodded. He stopped eating in his last weeks, just stared at the walls. They found symbols drawn in his blood under the mattress. Eli's hand hovered near the doll. A hiss, sharp and dry, cut through the room like a knife through silk. He yanked his hand back. The doll's eye twitched. Camille didn't see it. She was staring at the wall, at something he'd missed. Eli. He turned. Written faintly, just beneath the paint, in long curling script, "The asylum remembers." They continued through the hallway. At the end stood a rusted metal door. Unlike the others, it was sealed tight, chained from the outside with a padlock. The handle was worn smooth. Camille fished through her key ring. The fourth one clicked. The chain dropped with a heavy thud. "Are we doing this?" Eli asked. Camille's flashlight beam was trembling now, not from fear, but from adrenaline. "We have to. There's something down there, something they never moved out." She pulled the door open. The smell hit like a body left in the sun. Eli recoiled. Christ. The steps beyond wound downward in a tight spiral. "Sub-basement," Camille whispered. Eli checked his gear. Audio's still clean. He wasn't sure why he lied. They took the stairs slowly. Each one was narrower than the last, forcing them to shuffle sideways. The flashlight flickered as they reached the bottom. A heavy, vault-style door stood at the end of a short corridor. Its hinges were warped. A small sign above the frame, almost playful in its typeface, read, "Observation level, authorized staff only." Camille ran her hand over the handle. Her fingers came back, sticky, red-brown, fresh. Eli lifted the camera. The hallway behind them had gone dark. His screen glitched, once, then returned. He blinked. "My battery just jumped back to full." Camille swallowed. "That's not possible." Eli looked down at his recorder. The timestamp was wrong. It now read, March 3rd, 1967, 11:47 p.m. The vault door groaned as it opened. Inside was a circular chamber, colder than the stairwell above. The air buzzed with something unseen, like static in Eli's bones. His flashlight beam shivered across rusted filing cabinets, overturned wheelchairs, and mildewed stacks of folders that leaned like gravestones. Camille stepped in first. Her breath came out in small, fast clouds. "It's a record room," she said, "but these aren't patient files." She reached into a box labeled Dr. Emile Cavendish, Private, and pulled out a leather-bound ledger. The binding cracked in her hands, pages stuck together by time and moisture. Eli scanned the perimeter. A projector stood in one corner, tangled in cables, its lens aimed at a peeling screen on the opposite wall. This was a personal archive. Camille murmured, flipping through entries. "Look." She held up the ledger. March 3rd, 1967. Subject D continues drawing. Speaks in tongues. No known source. Claims, "The night speaks if you listen long enough." Recommending third electroshock. No response from the administrative board. Isolation continued. She turned the page. There was a dried smear across the bottom. Ink or blood. It was hard to tell. Eli approached one of the filing cabinets and opened it slowly. Inside were photographs, black and white, unlabeled. One showed a hallway, this hallway, but with patients lining the walls, eyes wide, mouths open in frozen screams. Their faces were blurred, not by motion, but by something else. Something wrong with the image itself, like the film had been warped by the subject. Another photo showed the same mural he'd seen earlier upstairs, only in this one, the headless figures were moving. No one was holding the camera. Camille froze mid-turn of the page. "Did you hear that?" Eli paused his recorder. "No." Camille held up a finger. They stood still. A faint sound rose from behind the walls, like pages being turned rapidly. A whisper followed it, too soft to be understood, too constant to ignore. Eli turned slowly. The projector, long dead, began to whir. Its bulb glowed faint orange. It clicked, trembled, then cast a flickering image on the opposite wall. A black and white reel began to play. Eli didn't touch it. He stepped back. The film showed a man in a lab coat standing in front of a gurney. A patient sat strapped down, face obscured by shadow. The doctor was talking, but there was no sound. Then the patient turned toward the camera. Eyes missing, mouth sewn shut. Eli blinked. The image jumped. Now the patient was standing behind the doctor, still strapped to the gurney. Another blink. Now the doctor was gone. Only the patient remained, staring into the lens. And then the frame froze. A single message in white text appeared. "Still here." The projector died with a hiss. Camille stepped back. "We shouldn't be here." Eli didn't argue. He turned toward the vault door. It was closed. He hadn't closed it. He stepped forward, gripped the handle. It wouldn't turn. "Don't," Camille whispered. "Door's locked. Number, listen." Eli paused. Behind the shelves, beyond the walls, the whispering had grown louder. Voices, hundreds, calling names, reciting dates, singing nursery rhymes backwards. Camille clutched the ledger to her chest. Eli reached into his bag, pulling out a crowbar. He jammed it against the seam of the door, pushed, grunted. The metal groaned, but held. The whispering stopped, just like that. Silent. Then a single voice, clear, male, right behind them. "You're not staff." They turned. The room was empty. But on the wall behind them, words had appeared, scratched into the plaster by a hand unseen. "Cavendish remembers." Camille stepped back and stumbled into a cabinet. It toppled, spilling papers across the floor. Folders fluttered open. More notes, more photos. One photo in particular made Eli go still. It showed a man with a camera slung around his neck. Eli. But the background was wrong. It wasn't this room. It was a padded cell. And he looked older. Tired. Scrawled in marker across the photo. Subject 9D. Escaped observation. Eli's throat dried. "Camille, The door behind them groaned open. No one was there. They didn't speak. They ran. They sprinted down the corridor. The walls now bore new markings, spirals, eyes, diagrams of the human nervous systems scratched into the plaster. At one intersection, Camille stopped short. A new hallway. It hadn't been there before. It led to a single room at the end. Dim yellow light leaked out from under the door. There were no footsteps, no echo, only breath. Camille stepped forward. "Wait," Eli started, but the door at the end opened, and a hand beckoned. The hallway pulsed like a living vein. Camille's footsteps were nearly silent as she stepped forward. Eli followed, though his legs felt heavy, like something unseen gripped his ankles. The door at the end of the corridor hung open, creaking slightly, just enough to let the sound crawl back toward them. Eli raised his camera. The red light blinked. Recording. The hallway behind them sealed with a soft, unmistakable click. They were alone. Again. Inside, the room was circular, lined with mirrors. Dust caked their edges, but they reflected too clearly. Every angle of the room played tricks. Eli's reflection seemed slightly delayed. Camille's blinked when she didn't. A chair sat in the center, medical grade, rusted, with thick leather restraints and a head brace attached to a steel frame overhead. Next to it, a small table with a cracked speakerphone, a clipboard, and a reel recorder still spinning, though no one was near it. Eli stepped cautiously inside. The air was colder here than even in the vault. His breath came out in a slow ribbon of white. On the clipboard was a single page. Subject D. Observation notes. Final. Continue to speak in glossolalia. Unknown symbols found etched into skin. Responded to no stimuli except recorded whisper loops. Claimed to see the man behind the voice. Terminated at 11:47 p.m. Camille lifted the clipboard and stepped backward, catching her reflection in the mirror nearest the exit. She froze. "Eli," she said. He looked up. In the mirror, Camille stood alone in the room. Eli was missing. He turned to the real Camille. Still there, he waved his hand. In the mirror, nothing. "Don't move," he whispered. "Look behind me." Camille's flashlight beam slid across the room. No one. But in the mirror, a shape emerged. Pale, thin, wearing what looked like an orderly's coat, stained at the hem. Its face was entirely featureless, except for its mouth. It was sewn shut with thick black wire, and yet the skin bulged and writhed as though it was trying to scream. Camille dropped the clipboard. The creature twitched, and then it turned, in the reflection, toward them both. They ran. Out of the mirrored room, back through the hallway that now seemed longer than before. Lights overhead blinked with each step, perfectly timed to their breathing. They reached a four-way intersection that hadn't been there earlier. Left, right, forward. The mirrored hallway was gone. Camille stopped to catch her breath. That wasn't just a reflection. That was a... I know. Eli looked to the walls. We're not in the same part of the asylum anymore. The lights flickered off and didn't come back on. Only Camille's flashlight kept them tethered to reality. It flicked once, twice, and held. They picked the left hallway. The walls here bore no markings, no signs, just clean tile, too clean for a place sealed off for 60 years. The silence thickened. Eli felt like sound was being swallowed before it even reached his ears. Then they heard it, Footsteps, slow, dragging, one heavy, one light, approaching from behind. Camille aimed the flashlight back. Nothing. The sound stopped. They kept walking. They entered what looked like an observation chamber, glass separating two rooms, each filled with rusted recording devices, empty file shelves, and microphones that pointed inward toward a narrow, padded cell. Inside that cell was a single chair, and a figure sitting in it, unmoving, back turned to them. A long trailing hospital gown clung to its bony frame. Eli approached the glass. "Is that real?" Camille leaned in, her voice nearly a whisper. "I don't know." The figure turned its head slightly, too slowly. A crack sounded with the motion. Camille jumped back. The figure stood, but in the reflection of the glass, there was nothing. Eli turned to run. The room behind them no longer existed, just darkness. Suddenly a loudspeaker buzzed overhead. A grainy voice crackled through. "This is Dr. Cavendish. Subject D shows persistent dissociation, claims observers exist between walls. He continues drawing. They all draw eventually." Camille screamed as the lights exploded above them, showering the floor in glass. The figure in the cell vanished. Eli grabbed her hand and pulled her toward a steel door on the far side. He kicked it open and fell. They both tumbled down a chute, landing hard in a lower level they hadn't seen on any map. Here, the ceilings were low. Fluorescent lights buzzed. The hallway stretched on endlessly. Camille groaned. Where are we?" Eli didn't answer. He was staring at the wall beside him, written in chalk, over and over, in a child's handwriting. "I am not alone, I am not alone, I am not alone." At the end of the hallway, a door opened. A nursery mobile hung from the ceiling, spinning. Music played softly, discordantly. They stepped into the room. Inside were 8 child-sized hospital beds, every one of them occupied, faces covered with masks, all facing the ceiling, all breathing in unison. Eli stepped backward, horrified. The door behind them slammed shut. A monitor in the corner flickered on. Grainy footage showed the two of them, present moment, standing in the room. Then the camera panned slowly, revealing a 9th bed behind them. Camille turned. It was empty, until it wasn't. Something invisible shifted beneath the sheets, rising slowly. Eli didn't wait. He grabbed Camille's arm and kicked the side door open. They ran into the dark, not looking back. As they left, the speaker whispered once more, "Cavendish watches." They didn't know how long they ran. Time bent in that place. Hallways twisted, walls curved inward, doors vanished when turned away from. It felt like the building had a heartbeat, and they were moving through its veins. Eventually, breathless and scraped, they collapsed into a narrow janitor's closet, if it could even be called that. The shelves were bare. The mop bucket was bone dry. Everything smelled like dust and ozone. Camille sat against the wall, shivering, her lips moving silently. Eli sat across from her, watching the door. "We're not in the same building anymore," she said quietly. "I know," Eli whispered. I think we passed through something when we went into that mirrored room, like a threshold." Camille wiped her face. "Do you feel it?" Eli nodded slowly. "We're being watched. Not like surveillance, not like security. Something was aware of them, following. Not with eyes, but with presence. Every time Eli blinked, he saw an image etched into his mind. A figure wrapped in linen, face obscured, standing at the end of an impossible hallway. Still, patient, waiting. They opened the door carefully. Nothing stood on the other side. But the hallway was different again. Now it was painted pale blue. Linoleum floors, ceiling tiles, recessed lighting. All wrong, all clean, as if freshly built. Camille stepped out first. This looks like the original admin wing, she said. Before the renovations in '61. I've seen pictures in archived reports. Eli followed, but it was demolished. The west wing collapsed. I know. They moved forward, cautious. Doors on either side stood open, revealing offices, desks, phones, typewriters, all in pristine condition, untouched. Then the air changed. Colder. A sudden sense of gravity, like walking into the back of a cathedral. Eli stopped in front of a large double-door room. Cavendish, administrator, was printed in raised letters. Camille reached for the knob. He grabbed her wrist. "Let me go first." Inside was a wide office. Dust motes floated in still light. A desk sat in the center, spotless. Behind it, a wall of filing cabinets. Framed degrees and photos hung perfectly level. On the desk was a single-reel recorder and a ceramic mug, still steaming. Someone had just been here. Eli moved to the desk. The recorder clicked on automatically. A voice, dry, slow, disturbingly calm, filled the room. Day 372. Subject D is no longer speaking in human tones. There is structure in the utterances, inflection, rhythm, syntax, but no linguist has identified the language. We believe it predates Latin, perhaps something older. It speaks most when no one is listening. It called me by name today. I had not introduced myself. It told me the building is hungry, that it remembers, that it breathes. I believe it is no longer human, if it ever was. I now suspect Subject D is not the patient. It may be the asylum itself. The tape clicked off. Camille whispered, "He went mad." Eli turned toward the cabinets. All of them were locked, except one. He opened it. Inside were dozens of VHS tapes, labeled in careful handwriting, Subject D, Recording 1. Subject D, Recording 2. Camera 5. East Hall, Mirror Feed, Ward 12. He reached for one. The lights shut off. The air grew thick. Then, a low, bone-deep sound filled the room. Not a growl, not a hum, a whisper, magnified, so deep it vibrated in the teeth. Camille grabbed his arm. In the reflection of the office window, something stood behind them, tall, wrapped in linen, face featureless. Its fingers reached outward, slow, deliberate. They turned. Nothing there. The lights flicked back on, but the mug on the desk had shattered. They ran, again, out into the hallway, now warped. The doors stretched impossibly high. The floor dipped in strange angles. The air buzzed with that whisper. Every turn led to the same place. A wide circular hallway with 8 doors. A mirror hung above each one, and in each mirror, one of them stood. But the reflections didn't match. Eli's reflection grinned when he wasn't. Camille's scratched at the glass. Then the reflections started moving on their own. "Pick a door," Camille gasped. Eli looked around. They all lead to the same place." "No," she said. "Only one leads out." She pointed to a door with no handle, no reflection above it, only darkness. They pushed through together. Inside, silence. Just a small room, one cot, one chair, a single journal on the floor, open to the last page. Camille picked it up and read aloud. "I watched them leave. They will return. They always do. The building remembers. So do I. I'm part of it now. We all are. We are not locked inside the asylum. The asylum is locked inside us." The walls cracked. The floor shifted. Something moved behind the ceiling tiles, fast, heavy, wet. The lights burst. Eli pulled Camille to the floor. The door slammed, and the voice returned, not from a speaker, not from outside, from inside their own heads. Watching, waiting, wanting. Eli screamed, and the world went black. Eli woke to silence. A thick, unnatural silence, like the world had paused mid-breath. His vision swam, the corners of the room blurring like smeared oil paint. He sat up slowly. The room was empty. Camille was gone. Only the journal remained, closed now, resting gently beside his leg as if someone had placed it there. He stood, legs trembling. His gear was still strapped to his chest, though the recorder's light was off and the timestamp blinked. Error. "Camille," he called. Nothing. Just the low groan of settling walls. Or breathing. He wasn't sure anymore. The door creaked open at the lightest touch. Outside, the hallway had returned to its original form, or what he remembered of it. No twisted walls, no impossible angles, just the long corridor of the West Wing, covered in peeling paint and silent rot. The only sound was the soft tap of his boots on tile as he walked. Down the hall, left turn, then voices, not words, just presence, the same breathless murmuring that had followed them since they entered. But this time, it wasn't trying to scare him. It was watching, waiting, inviting. He found her near the main stairwell. Camille sat on the edge of the bottom step, arms folded tightly around her chest, eyes wide but blank. He knelt beside her. "Camille, hey, look at me." She blinked, then blinked again, faster this time. "It showed me something," she whispered. "In my head. It wasn't a vision. It was a memory, but not mine." "What did you see?" She turned her head slowly. A man, alone, in the padded cell. He was screaming, but no one could hear, because he wasn't inside the asylum. He was inside someone else. Eli said nothing. Camille looked at him. "It's you." They made their way back through the halls. The atmosphere had changed. The asylum didn't pulse or twist anymore. It was still, as though sated or tired or satisfied. As they passed the elevator, the doors slid open without a sound. Eli aimed his camera inside. Darkness greeted him, calm, neutral. He stepped forward, but Camille grabbed his arm. "No," he turned. "There's another way out." The exit tunnel was hidden behind a false wall in the boiler room. Camille had found the blueprints years ago, but never had reason to believe the passage was real. But now the bricks crumbled under Eli's touch. Behind them, a long, narrow hallway leading down and away from the main building. An emergency evacuation tunnel, untouched for decades. It smelled like cold earth and lead pipes. They walked in silence, the flashlight beam bouncing weakly against the stone. Eventually, the tunnel ended at a ladder. Camille climbed first. Eli followed. They emerged in the woods. The air was crisp. Morning. Birds chirped softly, almost unnaturally cheerful. Camille fell to her knees and laughed, a broken, breathless sound. Eli stared back at the tree line, at the shape of the building half hidden in mist. Black Hollow sat quiet, still, watching. Later they sat on the tailgate of Eli's van, parked by the gravel road. Neither spoke for a long while. Finally, Camille reached into her coat and pulled out something wrapped in gauze. It was the ledger, the one from the basement. She handed it to Eli. "You need to finish reading it," she said. "There's more than just patient logs in there. There's history, names, symbols." He opened it. Near the back, scribbled in a different hand, was a page titled "The Architect's Mark." The drawing was a crude floor plan of the asylum, but something was wrong. Each room contained a symbol, a glyph, a set of marks that didn't correspond to medical codes or construction notes. At the center, beneath the main building, was a sigil shaped like a spiral inside an eye. Eli reached up and rubbed his forearm. It burned. He pulled back his sleeve. A mark, a fresh one, red, raised, still warm. It matched the sigil exactly. He looked at Camille. She nodded. "I have one too." They sat there for a long time, saying nothing, just listening to the wind and the slow hum of the world returning to normal, until Eli finally spoke. "It's not over." "No," she agreed, "but at least we're not the only ones who know now." He opened his camera bag and removed the memory card. He slid it into his laptop and watched the first few frames play. It was all there. The asylum, the mirrors, the watchers, the voice. And, right before the last clip ended, one final frame. A face, linen-wrapped, eyes hollow, standing behind Eli's shoulder. He deleted the clip. Some things weren't meant to be shared. Some things stayed inside. It was waiting for me. It still is.